I still remember the exact feeling, the sudden, icy wave of dread that rolled over me the moment I realized I had been tricked. It was the kind of dread that makes your stomach lurch, your hands tremble, and your brain scramble for a logical explanation that doesn't exist. It all started about 6 months ago, shortly after I had moved back to my hometown to help care for my aging mother. She lived about 20 minutes away, and I'd found a small duplex that was perfect for my situation. Close enough to get to her quickly if needed, but far enough that I had my own space and independence. The house was modest, 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, living room, and a tiny backyard, but it had a warmth to it that made it feel like home in a way I hadn't felt in years. My mother's health had been a constant source of stress. She'd had a few minor falls, and while nothing was life-threatening, she was stubborn and refused most of my suggestions for help. I had tried to convince her to get a medical alert system, but she insisted she didn't need one. I tried to brush it off, but in the back of my mind, I knew that one misstep, one accident, could change everything. That night started out innocuously enough. I was sitting on the couch, catching up on a show I had barely paid attention to because my day had been long and exhausting. It was around 9 p.m., and the house was quiet. I had left my shoes by the door, my keys on the counter, and my phone within arm's reach. Then it rang. The caller ID displayed a local number I didn't recognize. For a brief second, I hesitated, half expecting it to be a telemarketer. But the number wasn't familiar, and something in the back of my mind nudged me to pick it up. "Hello," I said cautiously. A woman's voice came through, soft, measured, but urgent. She identified herself as a nurse from a local emergency room and immediately launched into a carefully constructed story. My mother had been brought in about an hour ago after taking a fall and hitting her head. She was conscious, alert, but asking for me specifically. Could I get to the hospital immediately? For a moment, I didn't process anything. My brain froze. I felt a wave of vertigo, as if the floor beneath me had disappeared. Then panic set in. This is exactly what I've been worried about since moving back. This is why I've been living 20 minutes away, to be there if something happened. I grabbed my keys without thinking. The front door slammed behind me as I rushed out, my pulse hammering in my ears. The world felt surreal, like I had been thrust into someone else's nightmare. There was no time to lock the doors, no time to check the house. All that mattered was my mother. The drive to the hospital was a blur. My thoughts raced, flitting from one terrifying possibility to another. Was she seriously hurt? Was she unconscious? Was this it, the moment everything changed? My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles went white, my vision tunneled, and I realized I hadn't even glanced at the dashboard. When I finally arrived at the ER, I was a bundle of anxiety and adrenaline. I practically ran to the reception desk. "I'm here for my mother," I said, voice trembling. She was just brought in after a fall. Her name is Mom's full name. The receptionist looked at me, puzzled. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no record of anyone by that name being admitted tonight." I froze. The words echoed in my head. No record? But I just got a call. I tried to explain. I recounted every detail the nurse had given me. The exact time, my mother's condition, even the phrasing she had used. The receptionist remained firm but sympathetic. "There's no record. Maybe you should try calling her directly." My stomach dropped. For a horrifying moment, the world tilted sideways, and the air seemed impossibly heavy. "She's fine. She's fine. She's fine." I tried to repeat it like a mantra. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed her landline. "Hello." Her voice answered, sleepy calm, completely unaware of the storm raging in my head. "Mom, what happened?" I asked, panic spilling into every word. "I was sleeping," she said groggily. "Why are you calling me so late?" The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. This had been a setup. Someone had deliberately lied to me, concocted a story so convincing that I would leave the house completely vulnerable. My heart pounded in my ears, and for a moment, I felt dizzy, nauseated. Someone knew exactly how to get me out of my home. I jumped back in the car, adrenaline and fury fueling my drive. The duplex, which had felt safe and familiar for months, now seemed alien. Every shadow between the streetlights and the lawn looked like it could be hiding something sinister. When I pulled into the driveway, I froze. The front door was still closed, just as I had left it. For a moment, I hoped, foolishly, that maybe I was overreacting, that maybe my paranoia had exaggerated the danger. Then I opened the door. The interior of my house was a nightmare. Drawers were pulled out, contents spilling onto the floor. My bedroom was completely ransacked. My laptop, my small jewelry collection, my TV all gone. But the thief, or thieves, had taken strange things too. Family photos ripped from frames, prescription bottles emptied, sentimental trinkets strewn across the carpet. It wasn't just a burglary. It was personal. I called the police immediately, shaking, my voice breaking. I gave them every detail, the fake hospital call, the precise time I'd left, everything I remembered about the caller. When they heard the story, the officers immediately agreed with my suspicions. Whoever had done this knew me, knew my mother, and had planned the theft meticulously. The more I thought about it, the colder I felt. There was no way this could have been random. The caller knew private details, my mother's health, the recent hip replacement surgery, her exact location. They must have known we would be gone for a period of time. The burglary wasn't just theft. It was carefully calculated psychological warfare. Over the next few weeks, I tried to go about my life, but everything felt different. I double-checked locks obsessively, installed additional security measures, and kept a firearm in the house for the first time since moving back. I avoided leaving for extended periods and became hyper-aware of anyone lurking near my house. Every phone call from an unknown number set my nerves on edge. Even stranger was the selection of stolen items. Electronics, things that could easily be pawned, were gone. Yes, but so were the photos. Why would anyone take family photos? There was no monetary value. It didn't make sense. The intruders had crossed a line. They weren't just thieves. They were invading our lives, taking pieces of our memories, and sending a message. I reviewed everything I could. My mother's recent interactions, who she might have given personal information to, any slip-ups that could have revealed too much. The list was short, but it included the one variable that had always concerned me, her social circle. My mother, friendly and chatty, often shared details about our lives without realizing the risk. My suspicion fell on someone who had taken advantage of that trust. You ever get that feeling that someone's watching you, even when you're completely alone? That cold knot in your stomach, that whisper in the back of your mind telling you something isn't right? I did, and I ignored it. Until the night, I realized the people who shouldn't be in my house were already inside. And by the time I understood what was happening, I knew my life could end in the next few minutes. This story takes place about 10 years ago, and I still remember it like it happened yesterday. I grew up in a smallish house, not cramped, but definitely lived in. For most of my childhood, I shared a bedroom with my older brother. 2 twin beds on opposite sides, 2 dressers, 2 closets, barely room to swing your arms. It wasn't uncomfortable, exactly, but it also wasn't the sanctuary you want in a bedroom. When my brother went off to college, I immediately claimed the extra space. I finally had the room for a desk, which felt like a luxury compared to doing homework in the basement or in my dad's office. For a couple of years, it was perfect. I had my own corner of the world, my little haven. Fast forward a few years, and I'd graduated college. My brother had taken a city job in our hometown, and my parents had invited me back home after graduation. But the room I had claimed? He reclaimed it without a second thought. My parents framed it as fair. You did the same to him, they said, and begrudgingly, I accepted it. I ended up moving into the guest room upstairs, which overlooked the driveway on one wall and the side of the house on the other. It was smaller, not ideal, but quiet and private most of the time. That Friday evening was one of those rare nights I got home alone. My parents were at the shore house. My brother was out of town for work. I had spent the day at a grueling job that drained everything out of me. By 11:30 p.m., I was lying in bed with a book, trying to decompress. That's when I heard it. A faint mechanical whirring, followed by the vibrating hum of the garage door. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but the vibration under my feet confirmed it. I froze. Nobody should be home. It took a few seconds for my brain to fully process the implications. My heart began racing, a cold sweat forming at the back of my neck. I ran to the window, peering out the driveway, but it was too dark to see anything clearly. The garage door stood open, black shadows spilling out from inside. My first thought was that it had to be a mistake. Maybe my parents had come back early, or maybe my brother's plans changed. But deep down, I knew better. I rummaged through the closet until my hands found a baseball bat my parents kept for emergencies. Heart pounding, I gripped it tightly and crept down the stairs, whispering reassurances to myself. It's probably nothing. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe they forgot something. Then I heard voices. Faint, muffled, but unmistakably human. Two men, definitely inside my house. They weren't whispering. They were talking quietly as they rummaged through drawers, searching for something. I froze in the hallway, clutching the bat. The operator on a 911 call had told me to stay put. I knew I should hide, but the overwhelming urge to defend my home surged through me like a shot of adrenaline. I stepped forward. Each creaking floorboard sounded like a gunshot in the silence. My parents' bedroom door was slightly ajar, shadows dancing across the frame. The men were inside, rifling through my mother's dresser. I took a deep breath and yelled a raw, guttural shout that made both of them freeze. The first man stumbled backward. My swing caught him in the leg. He cursed, collapsing to the floor. Confidence surged through me, even though the other man was larger, heavier, and clearly stronger. Before I could react further, he tackled me. We crashed to the floor, the bat slipping from my hands. My vision blurred. His hands wrapped around my throat. Panic surged. My lungs burned. I clawed at him, desperate, feeling my life slip away with every second. Then I saw the first man crawling toward us, a knife glinting faintly in his hand. I realized I was about to die. Somehow, in the chaos, the sound of distant sirens reached me. Salvation? Or just a cruel trick? My vision darkened as the second man picked up the bat and swung. When I woke, the world was soft around the edges like I was seeing it through water. An officer was kneeling beside me. He asked if I was okay. I nodded, dazed. The intruders had fled through the back, leaving the house in disarray. The police arrived, cameras flashed, evidence was collected. I refused the hospital despite the concussion. My parents yelled at me for confronting them. They were right. Later, as the adrenaline faded, I realized something chilling. Every door had been locked. The only way in was the wireless garage button in my father's car. Whoever it was knew us. They had timed it perfectly. They had studied us. The men were never caught. My parents installed a full security system, but the house never felt the same. Every creak, every hum of the garage, every shadow across the walls made my stomach knot. For weeks, I couldn't sleep properly. I would wake up imagining shadows, imagining someone standing at the end of the hallway. I'd stared death in the face and survived, but the memory was burned into my mind like a brand. Life before thinking you're about to die, and life after are different. That night taught me the fragility of safety, the vulnerability of routine, and how fast everything familiar could turn into a nightmare. I still remember the feeling, the dissociation, the weightlessness, the sheer disbelief of thinking, this is it. This is how I die. Nothing in life replicates that sensation. And nothing, no matter how secure you think your home is, can prepare you for someone who knows your life better than you do and is willing to exploit it. I never thought someone could make me question my own memory. I never thought a person could exist in the same space I called home and make me feel like I didn't. And yet, that's exactly what happened. I'm in my early 30s, single, living alone in a modest house I had rented for over a year. It was quiet, in a good neighborhood, with a small yard and just enough space to feel independent. I had settled into routines, getting comfortable with the creaks and hums of the house, the way the heating kicked in at night, the soft squeak of the front porch step when I came home, even the way the kitchen faucet dripped faintly when I turned it off too quickly. I knew every corner, every shadow, every sound. That familiarity was comforting until it wasn't. It all began on a Thursday night around 11 p.m. I was finishing up a late snack and getting ready for bed when I heard pounding at the front door. Not knocking, not a polite request for entry. It was aggressive, insistent, like someone was trying to break it down. My first thought was robbery, but when I peered through the window, I couldn't see much. The porch light didn't illuminate the visitor well, just a dark silhouette that shifted and swayed. I was irritated more than scared. I'm not a small guy. I work out, and while I wouldn't say I'm fearless, I never imagined that a person pounding on my door would intimidate me. I opened the door cautiously, keeping the screen door shut behind me. The man who stood there immediately made my stomach twist. He was roughly my age, average height, with disheveled hair and clothing that looked as though it hadn't been washed in days. But it wasn't just his appearance. It was his energy, unsettling, erratic, almost electric. His eyes darted rapidly around, never settling. He breathed heavily, pacing, hands twitching like he couldn't stay still. He radiated tension and fury all at once. "This is my house," he yelled. "Get out. You're trespassing. I'm calling the police if you don't leave immediately." I blinked. For a moment, I thought maybe he was hallucinating, on drugs, or just unwell. I tried to calm him, explaining I lived here. That's when it got weird. He began rattling off details about the house, specifics that no outsider could possibly know. "Your master bedroom door? It bangs into the toilet every time you open it. The back door sticks. You have to lift it slightly while turning the knob. The kitchen faucet leaks when you turn it on fast." Every detail he mentioned was accurate. My blood ran cold. How could he possibly know these things? Before I could respond, he pulled a folder from under his arm. It contained documents, lease agreements, pieces of mail, bills, all addressed to him at my exact address, all apparently legitimate, dated months before I had even moved in. Then he pulled out photos. And I mean photos, literally pictures of him inside my house, cooking in my kitchen, sitting on my couch, lying in my bedroom. They were recent, not old. The angles, the lighting, the furniture, they matched perfectly with my home. One photo made me freeze entirely. It was a selfie taken in my kitchen with him and a woman I didn't recognize smiling at the camera. Fireworks sat off to the side, clearly taken during the 4th of July earlier that year. I had been home that night, alone, with no one else in the house. And yet there it was, proof that they were somehow here. I felt my mind begin to fray. Am I losing it? Did I block out memories? Did I share this house with someone and not remember? The questions spiraled into panic. My pulse quickened, hands shaking. I told him I was going to call the police. That seemed like the only logical step. The moment I mentioned it, he froze. His eyes shifted, and the wild tension in his body evaporated. He nodded slowly, almost politely. "I'll wait outside," he said, then turned and disappeared into the darkness. I called the police immediately, explaining everything. When they arrived 10 minutes later, I was frantic. They were skeptical at first, but agreed to check the situation. They suggested contacting the previous tenants and verifying rental history. My landlord claimed he had no knowledge of this man and had never rented to anyone by that description. The previous tenants were equally baffled. He hadn't lived there at all. For 2 weeks, I walked around my house in constant anxiety. Every creak, every shadow, every unidentifiable noise made me jump. Then one night, I came home from a friend's dinner to find the house ransacked. But it wasn't a typical burglary. Valuable electronics were untouched. Jewelry was left behind. Instead, the chaos was focused on personal and bizarre items. Drawers pulled out, clothes tossed across rooms, family photos removed from frames, small sentimental objects scattered or stolen. Whoever did it wasn't after money. They were after ownership, evidence, control. The police investigated. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever did it had a key. And given the timing, it seemed almost certain that the man who had shown up at my door weeks earlier orchestrated the break-in. I replaced all locks, installed security cameras, and changed routines. But the psychological impact lingered. I couldn't shake the sense that someone had been living parallel to me in my own home, watching, observing, and collecting evidence to make me doubt my reality. The photos, especially those staged to appear recent, haunted me. Every time I looked at them in my mind, I felt violated. The evidence didn't just suggest a break-in. It suggested a parallel life had existed, overlapping mine, a life that wasn't real, yet somehow undeniable. Weeks turned into months, but the memory never faded. Every unknown caller, every sudden knock, every shadow at night reignited the same anxiety. I began locking every door, double-checking every window, living in a state of constant awareness. The rational part of me wanted to dismiss it. Perhaps he had forged everything or staged some elaborate scheme. But deep down, I knew that some things couldn't be faked. The intimate details of the house, the timing, the photos, the physical presence of someone inside. Someone had violated my home in a way that made me question my memory, my perception, and even my sanity. Eventually, life settled into a tense routine. I moved cautiously, locked doors religiously, and monitored security footage obsessively. The man never returned, and the authorities never identified him. But the lessons of that period stuck with me. Reality can be manipulated, and some intrusions are far more terrifying because they target your mind rather than your possessions. Even now, years later, I sometimes pause when a shadow shifts in the corner of a room, or when I hear a floorboard creak that I know I shouldn't hear. The memory of him, the stranger who claimed my house as his own, remains one of the most unnerving experiences of my life. He proved that the most intimate spaces we occupy can be invaded in ways that leave no physical trace, but echo in your mind forever. And in the quiet moments, I sometimes wonder if he knows where I am now, if he's still watching, if he's out there planning the next move. Because some people don't just break in, they erase the boundaries of your reality.